Good morning students. Myself Mrs. Amarja Sonone, working as a lecturer in Computer Technology Department. Today we are going to discuss how actually URL class is implemented using Java networking concept. In the previous session we have already completed how to create socket, how TCP socket is created, what is difference between client side socket and server side socket, as well as the sample program based on it. Now today we will be discussing URL class. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Actually URL is a reference or an address to a resource, but that resource is present on the internet. Resource may be a file, it may be a database query, or it may contain any image, or it may be any number of varieties which are available typically on an internet. URLs are just a subset of the more general concept of the URIs. So URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. Actually these are locators. So locator is nothing but they are identifying the particular resource which is present on a path or on an internet. So this is the sample URL which is to be written, but this particular URL has a number of different parts. So first of all we will be discussing what are the parts of URL. Very first part of URL is actually a protocol. So here HTTP is a protocol name that we are using. The second part is host name. Here www.javapassion.com is the host name which is to be provided. 80 is a port number which is present in your URL. So third part of URL is port number. Next comes reference. So networking underscore A. So it is actually a reference or an address of a file that you are interested in searching. And this entire Java intro / index.html is path as well as a file name that you wish to specify. So protocol, host name, port number, file and path name as well as a reference are the different kinds of parts which we usually consider whenever an URL is created. Now we have to see how the object is created with respect to constructors. Very first constructor is URL, and here in bracket with a string attribute you are just specifying the URL specifier. So here within double quotes you may write directly www.google.com. So that is nothing but the valid URL. In the second constructor you are passing another URL object as an argument, as well as additionally a string URL specifier is present. So here within a single object you may assign two different URL values, because URL object is also having some particular value and URL specifier is also having a value. So this is also the requirement in number of applications as per the user's requirement. In the third constructor, all the different segments of URL you are separating. So first argument is protocol name that you are specifying. Next is host name, then the port number and the path name. So all these four attributes you may pass separately one by one as an constructor. And in the last constructor you are just omitting the integer port path and you are specifying port name, host name and the path for the URL. So these are the number of options that you may use. Here very first constructor is more prominent for the use. Normally we are using this constructor when we are actually doing our programs. Now we have to discuss what are the number of methods present for this URL. So very first method is get protocol. So return type of the method is string. This method is responsible for invoking protocol name which is associated with your URL object. Normally protocol name will be HTTP. So get protocol method is responsible for retrieving the protocol name. Second method is get host. So get host method is responsible for retrieving the host name which is associated with your URL. So second method is get host. Third method is get port method. So this method retrieves the port number which is associated with your invoking URL object. If a port number is not specified, then by default -1 is the value that is to be written. So get port method is responsible for retrieving the port number. Next method is get file. So whatever file name is associated with your invoking URL object, that file name is retrieved. That is get file. and last method is toExternalForm. So toExternalForm method is responsible for retrieving or converting your URL object into the external form, but its return type is string. So entire URL is converted into the string pattern using toExternalForm. So here string format is considered as an external form for your URL object. So now practically we will be discussing how actually these methods are applicable. So I hope theory points or theory aspects are clear to all of you. Now without wasting much time, I will be doing a practical implementation. As an application, I am using a notepad file. So here I am importing java.io.star as well as java.net.star packages. Then URL demo is a class. In that I am using a main method and I am throwing a malformed URL exception. If you don't want to write this typical exception, you may write simply throws exception. But throwing an exception is mandatory. Now here I am creating the object of URL. So HP is URL object, new URL, and here within the brackets in double quotes I am specifying the entire URL path. So here protocol name is also there, host name is also there, port number is there, as well as the file name is present. So this is the entire full-fledged URL. While creating the object, I am using the first constructor. Now one by one we are just invoking the methods. So HP is our URL object. So very first system.out.println, you are printing protocol name. So I am just writing a protocol and the method used is hp.getProtocol. Secondly, I am using hp.getPort method, so port number is retrieved. In the next part, I am using getHost method, so host name which is associated with your URL is invoked. Next, I am using getFile method, so file along with its entire directories structure will be retrieved. And finally, toExternalForm means entire URL object is converted into the string as an external format. So this is the simplified version of a program. Simply with a system.out.println we are using one by one the number of methods. Now I am compiling the program. So for compilation, javac filename.java. So URL demo.java. Then I am executing the program. So after compilation we should execute the program. So Java followed by URL demo. If you are able to see, this is the output. So first value is the protocol name. So get protocol method, protocol name is HTTP. Get port, port number is 80. Host name is contentin.cricinfo.com. File is from the directory structure up to the file name, entire thing is retrieved. And toExternalForm means entire string value or entire URL value is converted into the string. Now one change I am doing in my URL. Here instead of specifying port number, I am simply removing that port number. So no port number is specified in our program. Now we are executing the program. So javac filename.java and we are executing the program. Now you are able to see what is the difference. Here port number is not specified. By default value for the port number is -1. So here -1 is the value that is to be returned. So this is the major thing that everybody should remember. In the theory examination, always question is asked onto this particular program and the methods. So URL topic is most important from the theory aspects and from the theory point of view. So I hope you all understand how actually the practically URL part or URL class is implemented along with its constructor and methods. In the next session we will be discussing how to create URL connection class with a URL class. So thank you so much.